There's no manual for the exact moment you realize your whole life is a lie. But mine started with a sock. A stupid, gray sock, too small for me, too big for my daughter, Cassie. And definitely not mine. I'm Nolan. I'm 45. Software architect. I live in Boulder, Colorado, where the air is clean, the neighbors wave, and the silence can be loud enough to scream. I thought I had a family worth protecting. Until I found that sock. It was a Sunday, quiet, cool. Melanie was making her lavender tea, humming something out of tune, and Cassie was up in her room scrolling TikTok. I was gathering laundry when I saw it, crumpled beside the dryer. Out of place in that intimate way that makes your gut twitch before your brain catches up. I stared at it for a long minute. Then tossed it in a hamper like it didn't matter. But it did. God, it did. Because I do all the laundry. I know every piece of fabric in this house. Every faded tee, every sports bra, every stupid novelty sock with pineapples. This sock was foreign. And that made it dangerous. I didn't ask about it. Not then. I told myself it could be Cassie's friends. Or something left over from her last sleepover. Except Cassie doesn't have friends over. Not lately. And the sock. It smelled faintly of cologne. Something sharper than anything I wear. That was the first splinter. The moment I started seeing everything differently. Melanie, my wife of 23 years, looked the same on the surface. Dark auburn hair always tied up in that messy bun she used to do without thinking. Athletic build. That freckle just above her collarbone I used to kiss when she came out of the shower. But she'd started wearing lip gloss again. Subtle, shimmery. The kind she used to wear when we were dating. She'd come back from errands flushed, her eyes wide, her mouth too soft. And the perfume? Different. New. Floral with an edge. Like she was trying to leave a scent behind on someone else's skin. I tried to bury it. I wanted to believe I was paranoid. That middle-aged dread was playing tricks on me. That I was projecting my insecurities onto the woman I once believed would die with my name on her lips. But the truth? It was already blooming beneath the surface. The real crack came when I opened an old family album one night, just because. Cassie had gone to bed, and Melanie was out with a friend. I stared at a photo from Cassie's 8th birthday. Her smile. Her eyes. Something didn't fit. Not her face. Her energy. It's hard to explain unless you've raised a kid, watched them stumble through their first words, bandaged their knees, seen the flicker of your own DNA reflected back in their quirks. Cassie has always felt distant. Not unloving. But different. She doesn't laugh like me. Doesn't get angry like me. Doesn't move like me. It sounds insane, I know. But something in me whispered. She isn't yours. And that's when the plan started forming. Quiet. Careful. Like building a fire from twigs under the floorboards. I waited for a night when no one was watching. Snuck into Cassie's bathroom. Took a strand of her hair from the brush. Sealed it in a plastic bag like it was evidence. Then I ordered the kit. Not the ancestry kind. A full paternity panel. Confidential. Clinical. I didn't tell anyone. Because if I was wrong, if this was just aging paranoia, I'd destroy my family for nothing. But if I was right, my whole world was already gone. And then my real hell had just begun. The DNA kit said results would take 10 to 14 business days. It took 12. 12 days of hell. 12 days of pretending everything was okay while I slowly drowned in questions I couldn't ask out loud. I didn't sleep. Not really. I'd lie in bed beside Melanie, her breathing slow and even, her back turned to me like always. I used to think it was comfort. Familiarity. Now it felt like a wall. Sometimes I'd lie there and imagine what she looked like the day she gave birth to Cassie. I wasn't there, long story involving a broken leg and a snowstorm, but she always described it like some sacred memory, the sweat, the screams, the moment she held Cassie and saw my eyes in hers. Now all I could see was fog. Gaps in the timeline. Smiles that didn't reach her eyes. She didn't know I was checking our shared calendar, comparing dates. I found old photos, Cassie in diapers, Melanie glowing, beaming, and I studied them like a detective stares at a crime scene. Searching for clues. For cracks. The worst part. Cassie. My daughter. The one I held through fevers. The one I taught to ride a bike in the cul-de-sac. The one who made me a #OneDad card out of macaroni when she was 6. If the test came back negative, what did that make me? A father with no biological claim. A fool who loved a lie. Every time she walked into the room, I felt like I was staring at a ghost. And I hated myself for it. But I couldn't unfeel it. That crawling dread that lives in the space between what you believe and what you fear. Melanie didn't notice. Or maybe she did and didn't care. She was on her phone more than usual. Late-night messages with the screen brightness turned down. She'd smile while typing, then clear her throat when I entered the room. Once, I walked in and she jumped like I'd slapped her. Just texting Cassie's school group, she said, locking her phone like a reflex. Cassie's school group doesn't text at 11:45 p.m. I knew that. She knew I knew. But we played the game. Because breaking the silence meant opening a door I wasn't ready to walk through yet. Not until I had proof. So I waited. Worked. Smiled. Played the part of Nolan, the father. Nolan, the husband. And then the email came. No subject line. Just a notification from the lab. My stomach twisted. I didn't even click it at first. Just stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the phone like it might explode. I went outside. Sat on the back steps. The sun was just dipping below the mountains, painting the sky orange and bruised. Then I tapped it. The words were clinical. Cold. A spreadsheet with percentages and medical terms. And at the bottom. Probability of paternity, 0%. I read it once. Twice. A third time. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stopped. It was like the world tilted. Like everything I knew was suspended midair, waiting to crash. Cassie, my daughter, wasn't mine. Not even a little. Not one strand of DNA. And somehow, the pain wasn't as sharp as I thought it would be. It was dull. Numb. The kind of grief that doesn't bleed. It just sits inside you, cold and dense, like a stone. I didn't tell anyone. Not right away. What would I say? Hey, remember how I raised this girl for 17 years? Yeah, she's not mine. Not even close. I sat on those steps until the porch light flicked on automatically. Melanie never came out to check on me. Cassie was at her friend's place, probably complaining about how annoying I was. How boring. How distant. I wanted to scream. Not at them. At the sky. At the universe. At myself. Because part of me already knew. And I didn't stop it. I let it happen. I loved a lie. I let that lie sleep in my home, kiss my cheek, call me Dad. Maybe that made me weak. Maybe that made me a fool. But after everything, I still wanted to be wrong. The next morning, Melanie kissed my cheek and said, I'm thinking of doing a cleanse next week. You in? I stared at her. A cleanse. Like we were just a normal couple making wellness plans, not a woman and a man whose marriage was balancing on a razor blade. I smiled. Sure. What I meant was, I know. What she heard was, I'm still asleep. But not for long. Because the silence was over. I gave her one more day. One last sunrise. And then I started gathering everything. Bank statements. Phone logs. A contact list I hadn't touched in years. One of them was an old friend of hers. A bridesmaid, once. Someone who used to call me the lucky one. She owed me a truth. I called. She answered. And by the time we hung up, I wasn't Nolan the husband anymore. I was Nolan the man who had been used. And next, it was time to look Melanie in the eye, and destroy her fiction with one sentence. The day I confronted Melanie didn't begin with fire. It began with coffee. She was at the kitchen island, humming along to some upbeat playlist she'd always turn on when she was in a productive mood. Wearing her favorite navy sweater, the one I bought her on our 10th anniversary, barefoot, hair in a casual twist that used to drive me wild. Her presence looked like comfort. Like home. But all I saw were shadows. I need to talk to you, I said, sliding the folded DNA report across the marble countertop. She didn't look up at first. Just reached for her mug, took a sip, and set it down with a faint clink. Then she saw the paper. Her eyes didn't widen. She didn't gasp. She just blinked. Like she'd been expecting it. "What is this?" she asked flatly. "You know what it is." She stared at it for a moment, then laughed. Actually laughed, a single, breathy exhale through her nose, like I'd just dropped a grocery receipt on the table. "You did a paternity test." "Jesus, Nolan. Paranoid much?" "No," I said calmly. "Just thorough." Her fingers tapped the mug. Once. Twice. Then she stood, walked to the sink, and turned on the water like we were done talking. I didn't move. Didn't raise my voice. "Cassie's not mine." She paused, water still running. Then turned off the tap. And said the sentence that would tattoo itself into my memory forever. "You always needed a daughter more than I needed a husband." No apology. No denial. Just truth, drenched in cruelty. I stood there, heartbeat in my throat, and for a moment I almost admired her. The sheer coldness. The control. The years of deceit wrapped up in one cutting remark. She turned around, leaned against the counter, arms crossed. Her expression was unreadable, calm, a little tired. Like I was inconveniencing her by bringing it up. "So what now?" she asked. "You gonna rage? Burn the house down? Go on some man tantrum warpath?" "No," I said quietly. "I'm going to show you something." I walked to the hallway, opened the small wall safe behind our bookshelf, and pulled out the file I'd been building. She watched as I dropped it on the table beside the test. Financial records. Bank transfers to an account I hadn't known existed. Screenshots of old emails. One in particular, a thread with an address I'd never seen. A backup account. One she used to forward deleted messages. And a transcript, courtesy of a friend of hers. Not just a friend. Her college roommate. Someone she'd lost touch with years ago, until she reached out to me, quietly, after hearing rumors. The transcript was of a phone call. Melanie had slipped up, drunk, careless, or just cocky. She admitted everything. That Cassie's biological father was someone I'd once met. A man who came and went before we were married. "I just needed someone stable," she'd said. Someone who'd love her more than he'd ever love me. She chose me. Not because she loved me. Not because she wanted a family. But because I was useful. "I gave you the life you wanted," I said, voice quiet. "While you gave me a lie." She opened her mouth. Closed it. And for the first time, I saw something crack in her expression. Not guilt. Fear. Because she finally understood I wasn't bluffing. I wasn't wounded Nolan anymore. I was done. That night, I told Cassie. She was in her room, curled up with her laptop and headphones. I knocked. She barely looked up. "Can we talk?" I asked. She paused her video. Took off her headphones. "What's up?" I sat on the edge of her bed, hands trembling slightly. Not from fear. From the weight of what I had to say. "I did a test," I said. "A DNA test." She raised an eyebrow. "What, like one of those find your roots things?" "No," I said softly. "Paternity." Silence. She stared at me. Confused. Amused, even. Like it was some bizarre joke. "What are you talking about?" "I'm not your biological father, Cass." She blinked. Once. Twice. Then scoffed. "Seriously? You're going to pull this now? What, you want me to cry? Beg?" "It's the truth," I said. "I have the report." She stood, pacing now, arms crossed. "So what? What does that even mean? You're still my dad. You raised me. You paid for everything. Isn't that what matters?" I stood, too. "Yes. It is. But you deserve to know the truth." And then, like lightning, she spat the words that shattered me completely. "If you were more of a man, maybe Mom wouldn't have needed someone else." The world tilted. She didn't scream. She didn't flinch. She said it like she believed it. I didn't speak. I just turned and walked out of the room. Each step felt heavier than the last. That night, I changed the locks. There was a time Melanie used to laugh in her sleep. Not a big laugh, just soft exhales. A little lilt in her breath, like her dreams were lighter than mine. I used to lie awake and listen, smiling into the dark, thinking, God, how lucky did I get? Now, she lay in that same bed, our bed, wrapped in the linen I'd picked out during a trip to Aspen. But she didn't laugh in her sleep anymore. She murmured. Names. Not mine. That night, I didn't sleep beside her. I watched her. The moonlight spilled through the slats in the blinds, carving silver lines across the duvet. Her back was to me, of course. It always was lately. And her phone, face down on the nightstand, buzzed once, then twice. She didn't move. But her breathing changed. That's when I knew, whoever it was, she was still in contact. Even after the confrontation. Even after the DNA truth. She didn't stop. She was just hiding better. The next morning, she pretended nothing had happened. Made eggs. Played music in the kitchen. Wore that dusty pink tank top I used to call her summer shirt. She hadn't worn it in years. Not for me. I didn't ask why. Because I already knew. Later that day, I pulled up an old app one hadn't touched in forever, one of those Find My Phone trackers we'd set up years ago. Back when trust wasn't something we questioned. I never disabled it. Neither did she. At 11:22 a.m., Melanie's dot stopped at an address I didn't recognize. An apartment complex. Midtown. Building 3. I sat in my car for nearly 40 minutes outside that building. Didn't move. Didn't even blink, it felt like. Until I saw her. Hair up. Oversized sunglasses. That same dusty pink tank top. She exited with a bounce in her step I hadn't seen in years. Not for me. Not for home. She adjusted her purse, smiled at her phone, and started walking. Then the door opened again. A man followed. Tall. Athletic. A few years younger than us. Light stubble. Tan skin. He called something after her, playful. Teasing. She turned, swatted at him like it was a joke between old lovers. Then he reached her. And kissed her. Right there on the sidewalk. Her hand slid around his waist. His rested on her hip. They stood like that for a second too long. Long enough for the world to stop moving around me. I didn't get out of the car. Didn't take photos. Didn't yell or demand an explanation. I just watched as the woman I built a life with held another man like she used to hold me. And I realized, she never planned to stop. That night, she came home humming. Dropped her bag by the door. Took off her shoes with that same absent-minded ease. She made tea, curled up on the couch, scrolled her phone like it was any other Tuesday. I sat across from her in silence. She didn't look up. Didn't ask why I was staring. I watched the steam rise from her mug, curl into the air, dissolve into nothing. Just like my marriage. Then, as if she'd felt the shift, she glanced at me and asked, "You okay?" I wanted to ask her 1,000 things. Was any of it real? Do you even remember the man you married? What's his name? Did you tell him about me? About Cassie? About the man you hollowed out piece by piece? But instead, I just said, "Do you love him?" She blinked. Didn't feign confusion. Didn't ask who. Because she knew. Her voice came out low. Measured. I don't know what love is anymore. Then she got up. Walked to the sink. Rinsed her mug. Just like that. No tears. No apology. No shame. Later that night, as I lay in the guest room, my room now, I thought about the last time we made love. Not the act itself. The before. The atmosphere. The way she touched my chest like it was unfamiliar. The way she kissed me, slow and distracted, like her mouth was following muscle memory, not desire. She was there. But she wasn't. It was like being loved by a hologram. A ghost in a body I once called home. She cried afterward. Told me it was hormones. Said she was just tired. But now I know what it really was. It was guilt. Leaking out of her in waves, too much to hold in anymore. Or maybe not guilt. Maybe regret. Not because she hurt me, but because I was starting to see through her. To peel away the layers of wife and see the woman beneath. The architect of a decade-long deception. The woman who used my name, my love, my blind faith like scaffolding for the life she actually wanted. And Cassie? Cassie didn't speak to me after that night. She stayed locked in her room. Avoided eye contact. Slammed doors, muttered things I couldn't make out. She texted Melanie constantly. I saw the name flash across the screen when Melanie left her phone unlocked for once. They were rebuilding without me. Like I was the villain. I didn't yell. Didn't throw things. Didn't scream into the void like I wanted to. Instead, I poured a glass of scotch. Sat in my chair. And burned everything. Every card. Every anniversary letter. Every photo I'd printed and hung by the staircase. I took them to the fire pit in the backyard and watched them curl into black smoke. Ashes of a family that never truly existed. And then I smiled. Because something in me, something buried beneath years of compromise and silence, was waking up. The part of me that remembered who I was before Melanie. Before Cassie. Before the lie. And I knew what had to come next. No more silence. No more protecting anyone but myself. There's a specific kind of loneliness that doesn't come from being alone. It comes from realizing you were never truly seen by the people you built your life around. That's where I lived for the next week. Cassie stopped speaking to me. She'd walk past me in the hallway like I was a ghost. She left dishes in the sink with lipstick stains I couldn't ignore. She slammed doors. Blasted music. Ate her dinner on the porch with her AirPods in. Melanie. She played the grieving martyr to perfection. She told her friends I was acting distant, that I was going through something. At one point, I heard her on the phone late at night, pacing the hallway outside my door. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "He's not the man I married anymore. I don't even recognize him." I laughed. Loud enough for her to hear through the door. I wasn't the man she married anymore. That man was dead. Buried the day the DNA test came back. But from the ashes, something else was starting to rise. Clarity. Rage. Purpose. That was the night I opened the file again. The one I'd left locked away after the first confrontation. I added to it, screenshots, emails, bank transfers from Melanie to a man named Paul, confirmed via an old group chat, and a careless Venmo memo that read, "For the weekend." I compiled it all. Like a prosecutor preparing for trial. But I wasn't going to court. I was going to war. First, I called a lawyer. Quiet, expensive, and highly recommended. He didn't ask unnecessary questions. He listened, read the file, and simply said, "She's been planning your replacement for a long time. You're not crazy." The relief I felt, it was disgusting. To feel validated that your life was a lie. But that's where I was. I sent the paperwork. Separation notice. Immediate asset freeze. Cease and desist regarding defamatory statements, because yes, Melanie had started planting seeds online. Cryptic posts. Passive-aggressive stories. Some men pretend to be fathers. Some just pay the bills and call it love. I screenshot that one. Sent it to my lawyer. He laughed and said, "She'll regret that." I didn't post anything in return. Not yet. But I was done playing defense. The night I handed her the separation notice, she didn't flinch. She blinked, read it slowly, then looked up at me with cold amusement. "You really think this'll scare me?" "No," I said. "But the next part will." I opened my laptop. Pressed play. It was a phone recording, quiet, shaky, but clear enough. Her voice. Laughing. Tipsy. Venting to her old college friend during a Zoom happy hour I'd secretly recorded from the hallway. "I mean, honestly," she said, swirling a wine glass, "I picked Nolan because he was safe. Like, PDA safe. Like, he'll never question anything safe." Her friend laughed. Melanie laughed harder. "I put his name on the birth certificate because he needed to feel like a man. And it worked. 23 years of free stability. That's a win." I closed the laptop. Melanie stared at it, the smirk fading. "You recorded me. You gave me a reason." She stood slowly. Her mouth opened, closed. Then she grabbed her keys. "You're going to regret this." "No," I said, walking past her, letting the door swing shut behind me. The regret expired the day I learned the truth. I heard her scream into the empty hallway. And for the first time in months, I felt peace. Not because it was over. But because I had finally chosen myself. Melanie didn't leave quietly. 2 days after the separation notice, she showed up at the house like it was still hers. Dressed for war in tight jeans and a blazer, sunglasses even though it was raining. She didn't knock. She used her key. I was waiting in the living room, sipping coffee like it was just another morning. The suitcase I'd packed with her essentials was already by the door. She dropped her purse on the floor. "You think you can kick me out of my home?" "It's not yours anymore," I said, calmly. "Not legally. Not morally. And very soon, not publicly." She scoffed. "You wouldn't." "I would," I said. And I already did. She didn't know yet. About the Dropbox folder. The one I'd created with a nondescript link. Password protected. Anonymous email. All sourced, timestamped, organized like a dossier. Screenshots of her conversations. The financial transfers to Paul. A selfie she'd accidentally backed up to our cloud, her in lingerie I'd never seen, in a hotel room I'd never been. And the audio clip. The one where she joked about faking paternity like it's a savings bond. She thought she was untouchable. What she didn't realize was that people love the fall of a fraud almost as much as they love a comeback story. Especially when receipts are involved. That same afternoon, I sent the link. To the reporters who used to feature her fitness brand. To the local parenting bloggers who'd invited her on podcasts about modern motherhood. To her old college friend who still ran a blog called Glow and Grow. To her sister. Yes, even to her sister, the one who once called me a boring suburban boy with a chuckle and a Chardonnay buzz. The reaction was instant. Her brand pulled her name from the website. The ambassador gig she had. Gone. Emails leaked. Comments exploded. Her Instagram turned from curated filters and sunrise workouts to a wall of silence. Then, private. But the best part? Cassie finally texted me. Just a single line. We need to talk. We met at a cafe near her campus. She looked tired, eyeliner smudged, hoodie pulled over her head like a shield. No hug. No, hi, Dad. Just her sitting across from me, arms crossed, eyes twitching like she hadn't slept in days. I don't know what to believe anymore, she said. That's because the truth was buried for so long, I said. But it's out now. And it doesn't need to shout. She nodded slowly. Then asked me the question that nearly shattered me all over again. Do you still think of me as your daughter? I looked at her. Really looked. And for a flicker, I saw the kid who once made me a Father's Day card out of cereal boxes and Elmer's glue. But I also saw the teenager who parroted her mother's venom back at me when I needed her most. So I told the truth. I don't know. Tears welled in her eyes. She bit her lip, nodded, and didn't argue. She just sat there, quietly breaking. And I let her. Because sometimes the most honest thing you can do, is not fix it. Let it hurt. Let it sit. So it doesn't happen again. Melanie never apologized. Not once. She sent a cease and desist letter instead. Accused me of emotional sabotage, of manipulating the narrative to damage her career. My lawyer, same one who handled my separation, had it framed. Hung it on his office wall like a trophy. Most unintentionally ironic document I've ever read, he said with a grin. I didn't respond to her letter. I didn't need to. The world already had. The whispers around town weren't whispers anymore. People we used to brunch with avoided eye contact. Her yoga studio restructured. Her podcast episodes disappeared from Spotify one by one. But me? I didn't celebrate. I packed. Sold the house. Too many memories soaked into the drywall, ghosts of a life I never really had. I moved to a smaller place up in Netherland, near the Pine Line. Quiet. Clean. With a porch that creaked just enough to remind me I was still here. Cassie came by once. Just once. She stood on the porch, clutching a manila envelope. Inside, a letter. Handwritten. Apology? Maybe. Closure? Maybe not. I haven't read it yet. It's in a drawer beside the fireplace. Some nights, I stare at it and think maybe tomorrow. But then the fire crackles, and I let it wait. I don't date. Not yet. I'm learning how to cook again. 4-1. Bought a dog, a rescue mutt with floppy ears and anxiety that matches mine. We take long walks together, both of us learning how to trust the world again. Sometimes I think about Melanie. Not with rage. Not even with sadness. But with a sort of detached awe, like watching footage of a house fire you used to live in, amazed you ever survived it. She built her life on image. On curated perfection. But truth? Truth doesn't need filters. It just waits. Patient. Steady. Undeniable. She tried to paint me as controlling. As weak. As boring. But in the end, the silence spoke louder than her spin. And the truth? It burned brighter than her lies. I've learned betrayal isn't always loud. Sometimes, it walks quietly. Brushes your daughter's hair. Kisses you goodnight. Tells you it's tired from yoga. Then slips out the door with a bag you didn't pack. But when you finally see it, when you stop gaslighting yourself into believing love excuses deception, you don't chase closure. You build a new door. And lock it behind you. Because the truth didn't set me free. I did.